Can you hear me?
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you so much, TFN, for inviting me here. So my name is Arika Oka. I'm the Managing Director of the Black Cultural Archives. So I'm going to talk to you about the Windridge Compensation Scheme clinics that we plan to roll out. Black Cultural Archives is the home of Black British history. We started about 40 years ago as a positive way to recognise and celebrate the contributions of people of African and Caribbean descent in the UK over the past 2,000 years of Black presence on this beautiful island. So our mission is to document, celebrate and preserve the histories of our communities to help society move forward together with an understanding of our shared history. So we host exhibitions, we have a learning programme that works from primary schools up to universities, especially even foreign universities that come and have led sessions with us. We also have a volunteer and workforce development programme, but most importantly, we are a safe space and trusted home for members of our communities. And that's partly because history is a live topic that affects the day-to-day lives of people of African and Caribbean descent in the UK. The Windridge Scandal that broke last year being a case in point. So in case you don't know, the Windridge generation began arriving in about 1948 in response to a call to empire to help rebuild our country after the devastation of the Second World War. So it's no coincidence that the NHS is also the same age as the Windridge generation. Last year it emerged that some erroneous shredding of historical documents that evidence the arrival of members of the Windridge generation led to questions about their settled status, which meant that members of the Windridge generation were being denied access to healthcare, they were losing jobs, becoming homeless, their children and grandchildren were, university places were being called into question. So you can see some stats up there about the scale of the crisis. BCA immediately responded by holding an emergency public meeting, which followed with about 41 emergency impromptu legal advice surgeries. So we saw about 200 people then. Since then, the government has launched a compensation scheme for people unlawfully affected by the Windridge Scandal. To access the compensation scheme, it's a huge form. You have to provide a lot of documentation about the effect that not having documentation has had on you. So as you can imagine, it's quite a difficult process to go through. We are hearing stories that some lawyers are charging fees of up to 67% for helping people access the compensation scheme. There is an official route through the Citizens Advice Bureau. As you can also imagine, some of the people affected in the crisis do not necessarily trust some of the official routes. Because BCA is a safe and trusted home for members of our community, we want to build on the impromptu clinics that we held last year and actually hold compensation scheme advice clinics. So these are triage clinics where people begin to fill in the forms, they get advice on genuine pro bono lawyers, not the ambulance chaser lawyers, but especially we're there to try and connect people to the help that they actually need. So we're a portal, we're a safe space, and we'd be working with trusted lawyers. There's a group called Windridge Action, which already run in their own law firms occasional drop-ins for advice. So we would be the way of accessing those lawyers, as well as our general mission to document the crisis and to keep the crisis on the national agenda. So when we first held our first public meeting, which was an emergency one in response to the crisis, plenty of members of the media were there. There's a journalist at The Guardian who's just published a book about the Windridge Scandal. She was there at the first meeting and followed up. David Olusoga, who you might have seen his recent BBC documentary, he was there, he followed up with some of the people there. So BCAs Reach is national, and what we want to do with these clinics, now that we can have a planned response to the compensation scheme, is to really create a model that can be rolled out nationally as a model of best practice, keep it on the national agenda, help people access genuine pro bono advice. So just examples of people we've helped. Of course, this is all confidential, so they're anonymous. One woman had been sleeping rough. She was brought to BCA by a friend for legal advice. We helped a gentleman whose sister was a cancer sufferer. She had lost access to the NHS because her settled status had been called into question. So these are very serious kind of immediate issues that we're dealing with. We think £12,000 would help us to achieve our target of reaching those people most in immediate need and also rolling out this model of best practice. We've been incredibly lucky to have a pledge of £2,000 from the Windridge Justice Fund, and we're in talk to the Home Office to secure up to £1,000 for a kick-off meeting from which the clinics would then roll out. We're also looking for any lawyers who might be in the room who might also, just in case, you never know, who might also want to lend any help, pro bono help, and any voluntary administrative support, any marketing support on a voluntary basis that would help us get the message to people most in need. So that's it. Thank you so much.